Mulan is one of my all-time favorite Disney movies. In China, however, the film was highly criticized. Because of this, the Chinese dub made many changes. Other countries also made a lot of significant changes in their movie version. This video will feature the Chinese, Japanese, Spanish, Russian, Arabic, and many other dubs. Without further ado, let's get started. In the American version, the characters often used the word China. However, in the Chinese dub, this word was systematically removed.
Now all of China knows you're here.
警报马上就传遍全国。
Leader of China's finest troops.
统领中原最好的军队。
The reason behind this is that China is a westernized name for the country. In China itself, the country is called by a different name. So, in the Mulan dub, they chose to replace it with neutral terms like country, homeland, and occasionally the Middle Kingdom. Now, there's a scene in the middle of the movie where Mulan goes to a lake at night, and just then, a group of men approaches. In this scene in the American version, Mushu implicitly references Mulan's feminine body parts, but doesn't name specific body parts. However, this line was changed in the Japanese dub.
There are a couple of things I know they're bound to notice.
In contrast, the Chinese version replaced it with a reference to Mulan's swimsuit, and it's a bit strange.
他连个3点式都没穿呢。
If you recall, Mulan's full name in the American version is Fa Mulan. However, in the Chinese dub, she's called Hua Mulan.
The Fa family.
No.
花甲接旨。
Yes, my name is Ping. 没错，我就叫花瓶。
The reason for this is that Fa Mulan is the Cantonese pronunciation of her family name, while in Mandarin it's pronounced Hua. For historical reasons, Americans interact more with Cantonese speakers than Mandarin speakers, which is why this difference arose. Now, there's a hilarious scene in which Mushu sets fire to the main villain's hawk. In the American version, Mushu calls it Mongolian barbecue. Quite an interesting joke, but it was adapted even more interestingly in a few dubs. For example, in the Russian version, Mushu calls it chicken Kyiv. It's a famous and quite delicious Ukrainian dish, and Kyiv is Ukraine's capital city.
Now that's what I call Mongolian barbecue.
Котлета по-киевски без гарнира.
In the Japanese version, Mushu calls it yakitori, and that's a Japanese national dish.
これぞムッシュフ焼き鳥。
The Armenian dub also replaced it with their dish, shashlik.
Այս է ես կոչում եմ մոնղոլական խորոված.
There were plenty of interesting adaptations regarding food in Mulan. Each country added its national dish to its dub, and it's great to see all these changes. We'll talk about it later, but now, speaking of delicious food, let's talk about today's sponsor, where you can taste delicious and nutritious food, Factor 75. Factor 75 delivers fresh, chef-crafted, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep. What excites me most is that Factor takes the stress out of meal planning, going to these grocery stores, and cooking. And it's cool that these meals are ready in just 2 minutes. Also, they have a weekly menu of 35 options, including popular options like Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, Vegan, etc. So there is something for everyone. I don't know about you, but it's a perfect choice for me since I work the whole day on my laptop and I won't need to worry about my meals. If you're interested in giving it a try, head to factor75.com or click the link below and use the code Jaku50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders. Now let's get back to Mulan. In the Chinese version, the songs in the movie were completely rewritten. For example, let's take the Captain song. You could say that the song sounds much more brutal in the Chinese dub. It often talks about how terrible war is. Here, take a look.
You're suited for the rage of war. So pack up, go home, you're through. 沙滩太残酷，血光杀戮。若害怕，踏上归路。
Perhaps this change is somehow connected to Chinese philosophy and their perception of everything related to war. If anyone knows more about it, please leave your comment. The Chinese version also mentions Buddhist paradise in this song. Speaking of which, in the Ukrainian dub, the men sing something rather strange. I think this is a very odd adaptation since China doesn't really have a concept of a monotheistic god, so such a phrase sounds absurd in the Chinese context. It's a fairly common expression for people from Christian culture, but hardly for the Chinese. At the end of the film, Mushu asks for egg rolls. That was changed in all versions. For instance, in the Chinese dub, he asks to call and book a room at a karaoke place. Other versions also have some pretty interesting changes. Check this out. The characters in the film often talk about killing and death, and in the Russian version, most of these words were cut out to reduce the mention of such topics.
Manly urges, and you just gotta kill something. Необходимо с кем-нибудь разобраться.
This guy's got him scared to death.
Он сумел их запугать.
Additionally, the original version often mentions butts, and again, in the Russian dub, this was removed.
But I don't want to kick the other kid's butt. Но мне не хочется пинать ногами.
Hey, don't look at me, I ain't biting no more butts.
Нет уж, это больше я кусать не стану.
There's also a pretty interesting moment when Mulan goes to training. Here's how it's adapted in the Canadian French version.
My little baby off to destroy people.
It's quite an adaptation. In the Japanese dub, this moment was made more peaceful.
うちの子いじめられないかしら.
The Bulgarian version also did something unusual.
Хубавата ми кукличка тръгна на кървав бой.
Also, the American version often mentions that people have to serve their emperor. In the Chinese dub, this was changed to serving the country.
I'm ready to serve the emperor.
我决心为国尽忠。
This change was likely made because the emperor doesn't hold the same significance for Chinese people as Westerners might assume. While the emperor is certainly important, ultimately for the Chinese, the country matters the most. Serving the country embodies the kind of patriotism the Chinese dubbers felt the film lacked, and they tried to add that feeling to the movie. In one scene, Mushu says he likes the smell of socks and compares it to corn chips. In the Ukrainian version, the mention of socks was removed, and Mushu simply says he loves the smell of cheese.
So a couple of guys don't rinse out their socks. Pick it. Well, myself, I kind of like that corn chip smell.
А тобі ніяк не вгодиш. Ти лише критикуєш. От я люблю запах сиру, наприклад.
Meanwhile, in the French dub, he compares the smell of socks to Peking duck.
Moi j'adore cette vieille odeur de pain laqué.
Let's talk about the songs again. First, look at this clip.
Did they send me daughters when I asked for sons? Je ne veux pas d'écolières pour défendre nos terres.
Yes, for some reason, the captain compares the men to schoolgirls in the Canadian version. Now, when the captain tells Mulan to leave, the Turkish dub does something strange. In this one, the captain gestures for Mulan to leave. Still, at the same time, he says she'll be a warrior. What?
How could I make a man out of you? Easy man, so much
In one scene, Mushu calls the horse Bessie. It was also changed in every version as they pleased. The horse has been called Momo, Margarita, and other names in different dubs. Take a look.
Down, Bessie.
Освари, Момо.
Кушай, Маргарит.
Стоять, Зорька.
Échate claravella.
In another scene in the middle of the film, there's a joke about food. In the Arabic dub, instead of shrimps, they mentioned the Arabic dish called laban.
ماذا تريدون؟ أريد طبق أرز باللحم. أنا طبق سمك باللحم.
However, in the Armenian dub, things got a bit strange. It seems the Armenian localizers didn't quite understand the joke. So in this version, the emperor's advisor literally asks them what food they want to order.
Ինչ եք ցանկանում ուտել։ Լավ եւ բացապուր։ Իսկ ես քաղցր եւ կծու ծովախեց գետի։
In the American dub, the main villain is named Shan Yu. This word is very similar to the real title of a supreme ruler of the Huns, Chan Yu. And in the Chinese version, they decided to call him Chan Yu. So his name literally translates as king or war chief in the Chinese dub.
Shan Yu is leading them. 领兵的是单于。
Also, at the beginning of the movie, the Russian version makes an interesting change in the song. It directly states that girls are born to get married.
Our girl can bring her family great honor in one way. Зачем родятся девушки, чтоб замуж выходить?
It's also fascinating how the Chinese version changed the proverb at the film's end. They added the name of Mount Tai, a sacred mountain in Taoism.
No matter how the wind howls, a mountain cannot bow to it.
任凭野风呼号，泰山永远不会低头。
Now, there were so many changes in Mulan dubs that I actually made a second video in which I talked about all the other fascinating changes in different dubs. This video is available to my members on YouTube and Patreon for just $6 a month. Anyway, thank you for watching today's video. It was exciting to delve into these dubs. If you have anything to add to this video, please comment below. See ya!